Hello everyone, Ted Simpson here, and I am here to show you another fine painting today on a 12 by 16 canvas set in the landscape orientation. We've got our supermoon set up here. I think we just had a nice supermoon here this past couple of days, and I thought I would do a nice updated version of my harvest moon. Now this is one I haven't done 5 years or so. I thought, let's give it a try. First step we got to do is put in our little craters of the moon. I like doing this with the black gesso, letting it dry for 5-10 minutes or so, and then we'll come over it and do it with oil. So with the magic of some slight editing, we'll put on our craters here. A little bit of this black gesso, a crumpled up paper towel, dabbing some on here. Let's see what we can do. Now when you're doing yours, you just tap, turn your wrist a little and tap. Make sure you make the noises. It definitely helps. And if it starts looking a little gray, it's not really coming off crater-like. Just need a little more of the gesso. Okay, you can of course make this as dark and covered as you like. I like making a little, it's almost like a little Death Star, a little bright spot, and have the edges be a little bit darker on the outside here, but you know, you do you. And when you're set, you call it done. So I think the light source here, the sun is kind of on the other side of the earth, but it's reflecting up here. We see a little bit of a bright spot, a little less bright in other spots, and don't worry about it. It's always the hot tip of the day. Don't worry about it. So again, with the magic of editing, I'll be back, and this will be dry. And poof, here we are. All dried, ready to go. So, what we do now, we want to make sure always that gesso is completely dry. And we'll take our, just a little 1-inch brush here, and a speck, not very much at all, just a drop or two of the liquid clear. And we're just going to cover the whole canvas with a really, really thin coat of the liquid clear. And this doesn't take too long. We can go right over the moon. Look at that. Just showed you all 3 moves at once here. Crisscross, circle scrub, low angle scrub. And between those 3 quick techniques there, we'll have this liquid clear covered. This brush is definitely on its last legs, and bristles are stiff. Maybe a little paint got dried in it, but I wouldn't use this on anything other than just spreading liquid clear. You know. So what I do, I've got a bunch of these now. The brushes wear out, or they might have not got cleaned thoroughly, and they're a little stiff bristled, you know. I just put a piece of tape around it, and I know I don't do any of my fine or delicate work there with that brush. Use a newer brush for that, but it's perfect for scrubbing liquid white at the start, or scrubbing liquid clear. So look at this. Lots of liquid clear, very, very thin coat. Spread around there. It doesn't take much. What I'm going to do is take my paper towel and just give it a quick wipe. Take off the extra. If any little parts are too shiny, just give it a quick wipe and we've got the right amount. So I'm going to set this liquid clear aside. And let's come in here. I'm going to take my fan brush and a little bit of cadmium yellow. Just pulling a little bit of cadmium yellow into the brush. Doesn't take too much. This liquid clear allows us to create some amazing blending effects. So the first step here is I'm just trying to use the arc of the bristles there to follow the edge of the moon, and let's just drop a little in. Get up as close as I can there. I'm going to take a little bit of Indian yellow, just a little bit. Look how it creates definitely a little more orangey feel to it, doesn't it? There we go. And moving right along, I'm going to come in here, grab a little bit of the bright red, and the bright red will follow this edge over here on the left side. Does that make sense? Now the bright red is a little more opaque. You see how it covers those craters a little bit more. Still got a touch of transparency to it, so we'll see some. Now look at that. Now that we've got the moon covered, we can do a little bit of blending. And I'll tell you what, just because I have this brush here, this is that same old dirty one I put the liquid clear on. I'm going to hit right where those two colors meet, the yellows and the reds, and hopefully get a nice little transition color. See how I'm pulling a little bit of that color inwards? There we go. And at any point, you just wipe out the excess paint out of your brush if you think you're pulling too much in, if it's blending too much, you know? There we go. And you can blend this to whatever degree of softness you like. And I try not to here, but I did go outside of my border, so I'm going to try to just give it a quick little wipe with my paper towel. And that'll be okay. Now, I did leave just a touch of white there. Do you see that? If you wanted to, you could clean that up as much or as little as you want, but actually leaving a little bit of white there makes it look like an extra little sun zinger right there on the edge. But if I come back here, I can fill that in too and lessen that amount. Maybe we only want a little peak of it. Doesn't take much. This liquid clear just slides that yellow right on the white. Now for the rest of the scene here, let me give that brush a quick wipe and a quick double beaten. There we go. But just to be on the safe side, let's use a clean dry brush. You know, if you've ever painted with liquid clear before, you know that the paint thinner and the liquid clear don't really like each other too much. Create some weird effects. Sometimes we want weird effects. Not today though. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to lay out a very thin layer of the Prussian blue. Loading some up. And unloading it right on down. There is a risk of too much of this. If you can see like the grooves of the paint here, grooves of the bristles in the paint, I should say. Don't want to overload the canvas here. Just really looking for a thin film of blue. Now I've gotten this over 2/3 of the canvas now. Try sneaking up to the edge, just a couple of pulls around the curve. And that'll be okay. The rest of this is just going to get filled in. Little scrubbing, little circles, little crisscrosses. Just laying it out there. And moving on. You could do this with, any color really, of course. You know, we're kind of making this deep color. A lot of gray, a grayish blue would work. If there was a little more black in the mix, you could often do phthalo blue. And combinations of phthalo, Prussian, midnight black, all sorts of different shades back here. Just depends on your mood of the day. Look at that. Something like that. Now I'll clean that brush once again. And let's see about making some clouds. Ooh, I'm going to clean this brush really well on the easel there for Bob. And I'm going to go back to that fan brush. Let's make sure that fan brush is somewhat clean. And I'm going to start pulling through a little bit of the titanium white. This is really, really firm. If it's too firm, half a drop of liquid clear or liquid white will thin it down a little bit, but I think we'll be okay with it at full thickness, full strength. Pulling some, loading some, smoothing some, pulling some, smoothing. Plenty of color up there in the brush. And let us first set this brush aside. I tell you, it's always a learning experience for me too, a relearning experience. Got to put a background glow in there. What was I thinking? A little bit of this color in my 1-inch brush. Got to put some distant things happening in our sky before we put in our close clouds. So I'm just sweeping a little bit of titanium white, kind of up and around my moon a little bit, and then blending outwards. It's a little brighter at the horizon in my scene, and just letting it drift around. Something there, something there. Some color laying out on the scene. Something like that. So I'll come back with a soft brush and we'll just go over it. Back and forth, little X's. The more you work it, the more the paint mixes in with the undercolor. And you can darken this, make it all almost disappear if you want. I want there to be some bright mist and fog at the horizon. Just trying to avoid the edge of the moon. I don't want to accidentally make green. There we go. We put in some background brightness. Then we call it good. Now, with the old fan brush, going to start making my little cloud shapes here. Little somethings, little things going on here. The great thing about night scenes is you don't necessarily need to make the clouds super bright for them to be visible. Very little color is needed. And we'll do our little blending process here. Just the tips of the bristles, tiny, 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 tiny little circles, blurring and blending downwards. I'm going to try to create a little softness at the base of these clouds. And you see it mixes up with the undercolor. Start getting all these little things happening. And we're going to just work in some layers here. You know, maybe there's a little cloud form right there. I try to do as little as possible. Well, more so in my day-to-day life, if I can. But 1 or 2 clouds at a time, so we don't over cloudify our scene at once, you know. It's a little easier to do blending when we're only blending 1 cloud, so that's all I'm trying to say. And I love putting a little cloud crossing that moon. Got our kind of a spooky moon scene here, harvest moon scene. So one of the ways that we make that moon look even further away is putting something in front of it. Now for the moon part, wherever there is a little bit of cloud on the moon, I try not even to mess with it, you know? Very gentle brush sideways, calm it down a little bit, and move on. Don't really want to make that green cloud. So, like coming in this way here, I'll add a little cloud form. You can see it will pick up your moon color. So if you're worried about it, just wipe the brush before reloading. Oof, this one's a strong one, isn't it? That was a lot of paint. Didn't need to use that much, but I did. That's okay. Some of it will blend and soften as I build out this shape here. You can even move some of this color and make a distant cloud with some of the extra paint. Look at that. And just going back and forth here, I can just change this into a little bit of a brighter cloud just by putting a little more paint over it. Almost like highlighting the old cloud here. All sorts of stuff going on. You can see once you throw a little color on there, it all changes. It all gets softer and bluer and all sorts of things going on here the more that you work it. Or it doesn't change the less you work it. How about that? Fluff, 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 lift, lift, lift. A couple of final strokes to the side. There we go. Now it's the nature of every painter here to fiddle, fiddle, fiddle with it. You know, I feel the need here to add a little something to break up that straight line of the clouds. Something like that. I get it. It's the nature, just the nature of the game here. You want to fiddle it to death. Maybe a little stringy something right here. Now if we filled up the whole sky with clouds, wouldn't that be something? You could definitely do that, but having a little bit of sky just to remind us what we're seeing here, I think that's just fine. So, let me go ahead and clean a couple of brushes here. I think I had two different blending brushes going on, plus my fan brush here. Yeah, I tell you, it does make a difference when you just keep things organized, keep things away from each other, you know, especially those dirty brushes. That paint does like to jump right off your brush and right onto your skin sometimes. So there I go, clean two brushes at once. Looks double devil beaten there. Alright, well, I think we should make a color here. I'm going to take, there's my Prussian blue. Let's take a nice big old hunk of midnight black, nice little hunk of Van Dyke brown, and a much smaller amount of the Prussian blue. I'm going to even take a little bit of the bright red. What color do we get? It's just dark. Just something nice and dark. You can always change it. A little more blue, a bit more of the black. Something nice and dark. There we go. Just need something to give us an indication of some distant trees. Well, even a little bit more blue. I can tell I want it a little darker. That bright red really brightened things up, so I'm going to dull it down by adding more blue. Plenty of color in the brush. And here we go. We're going to push that moon back even further just by making these little distant tree shapes. Okay. It's kind of a tap and a slide. I've taught this style here, this little technique, a number of times here, and I always tell you, you just gotta let those bristles bend. That's what makes the point. That little bit of a slide as you're tapping down creates the rest of the shape. Now, you gotta make some decisions here, don't you? You gotta figure out where the moon sits in your world and cover up where you need to. Creating this sense of depth and distance here is easy as covering up a little bit of the previous step. Overlapping. You can make these tall or not so tall. Every time you do this is going to be different. Hopefully I'll remember. I'll show you the reference painting in a moment here. I'm not sure how much of this we're going to see over here on this side. We'll put it in just in case. And if we cover some of it up, it's just the way it goes. Gives you good practice anyway. Even if we don't see it, we'll know it's there, and it gave us a little bit of a practice for the next time. Okay, so let's come in here with our relatively clean brush. I'm just going to lightly tap out the bottom. A lot of chunky paint on there when I'm tapping all that background tree shapes in there. It does deposit some paint. So if you just give it a little tap and a lift, it flattens the color to the canvas. So it looks a little less chunky. Gives it that vertical feel again. There it is. And look at that. If you ever felt like it, you could just keep tapping. It might pick up a little bit of that cloud color and give you some mist as a layer separator. And we're going to start building out some stuff here. We've got trees and bushes and evergreens and everything in between. Oh my, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm tapping. I love this shot right here. This is important. Just look at those bristles bending. That's what gets the paint right up here on the top half of the brush and allows us to create a little leafy tree shape just by tapping, moving the brush a little side to side. See that? Just makes a basic shape. This is all silhouetted and nice and dark. Doesn't have to be anything more than that right now, just some dark color. Let's put, maybe there's another little bush here. And all this down here, don't really need to worry about it too much. You can make some individual shapes, but it's basically just filling in the rest. Little high, little low, bushes, jumping into the foreground a little bit. Don't need to worry about it too much, just working my way down. And maybe I just change my brush a little bit. This time I want to pull back and forth, you see that? And then tap. Pull a little down. Tap. Now we're going to create a bigger, leafier tree way out here. Just tapping down. Got to cover up this tree, and because the paint is a little bit softer than that titanium white, it sticks without mixing. But as long as you keep moving, that is. If you keep going with it, going over it and over and over it, then it will start mixing. So we're not sure here. Where are these trees in our world? Are they behind? Are they in front? Are some here and there? We don't really know. What I am going to try to figure out real quick here is at the bottom. I know this might be hard to see, but if I just pull sideways, you can create a little bit of grass, or what's eventually going to be grass, just so you can see the lay of the land. Okay. I think we need one more tall tree, according to my scene here. A little taller, a little more paint. That is some thick white there. There we go. I like it. And let's go ahead and clean this brush. Now, when you have a lot of paint in your brush, diving right into the paint thinner really contaminates your paint thinner. So what I do here is I wrap the brush, I give it a squeeze and a pull, take off most of that color. You can even give it a good scrub first, then go into the paint thinner. It will save you a lot of hassle in changing out your paint thinner halfway through your painting. If you don't put too much paint in it. Ooh, that was a good one. A couple more for Bob. All right, so I am going to take just a wee touch of this liquid white. If I can get the lid off. I just combined a couple of open jars of liquid white that I had here. So this one is really, really full. I cannot do it one-handed. There we go. So, little bit of liquid white, and if you can control where you put it, you're just going to be in better position here to create some beautiful highlighted effects. You see how I'm tapping? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, creating this texture here on your palette. And we've got enough here. Oh, I want to make this one dull. This is a harvest moon, so it gives an indication of fall. But maybe there's still a little bit of life, a little bit of the green in there too. Not much. And let's go ahead and look at that touch. Just touching. Reload the brush, and it automatically brightens up the next section here. So if you just take a moment and reload your brush every cluster or two, you just get all these little separators of darks and lights working together. There's one little tree. Now, I'm going to switch gears, and I just change my brush by loading by pulling. Look at that same pull and a tap. Pull some color down, find all of these colors, maybe a little bit of the shadow color, maybe even a touch of the blue. Ooh, there we go, and then push. Get some paint right up on the top of your brush. But we're still, like this dark color, we're still leading with the corner of the brush. See that? So I'm not tapping a 1-inch wide chunk there. Letting the rest of the brush come down as I tap. This here, just sort of tapping and moving, letting the brush fade off into darkness, and then you reload and repeat. I like it when you got like half of the tree has started to turn, but there's still some other flavors happening. That's okay. It doesn't all change at once. Now just turning my brush over, we're actually just loading some duller color here, a little more of the yellow ochre, pushing forward again, just getting that paint right up on the tips, but this time I'm using the other corner. That's what I meant to say. Instead of the left corner here, now I'm using the right corner. And again, tapping a little bit of highlight on this tree on this side. Keeping it moving. There we go. Now what we're going to do here, if I just tap, loosen up my bristles, look at that. Before it was all in a nice chiseled edge. But if I tap the brush out, I can get that paint right up on the tips again. And I can create these little bush shapes. Find the color that's speaking to you. And just make one or two of these at a time. Notice how I'm overlapping a little bit of the previous step. I'm going to go into a little bit more of the green and yellow. There we go. Just to add a different accent. I try not to get greedy. Just do one little bush shape at a time, because we can always go back and add another one. See how I just overlapped a little bit of that one? Just by reloading my brush, I create another bush. Back here, oh, we're just mixing up our colors, aren't we? This little tree shape here, it's going to catch a little bit of this duller stuff. Why not? That yellow ochre, very, very fall-looking color. Even a little bit of the bright red and yellow. The green will act as a duller here, but I move the brush a little bit over to the side here, and we can get all sorts of different things happening here. A little more of that orangey color. There it is. And we can overlap here and there, change the color, and immediately see a different section. A little more paint in the brush helps it come off easy, and if you're having struggles here, just a drop of that liquid white, half a drop sometimes, more than enough to thin the paint down. Going back to a little bit more of the greens, working my way down. How many layers do you want? Well, that's really up to you. Keep overlapping and building more of these down. And what I like to do is right down here, maybe there's a little wild grass, so I just push up, let those bristles bend a little bit. Maybe there's some stuff just kind of wild there. I'm going to come back and let's put a little bit of this grass in here. A little bit of the greens. Pushing up, get that little ridge of paint again. And if I just change the angle a little bit and tap, we can get some flatter looking stuff here. Why not? Create all sorts of indications here. Some flat grass. We have a little cabin to make today. And typically we don't build on slopes. So I'm trying to keep this grass relatively flat looking. Horizontal, if you will. A little bit of paint, and just tapping and moving. As I run out of paint, I'm also picking up a little bit of that blue that's there, and it automatically darkens for you. There we go. But at any time, when I reload my brush, boom, you can brighten things up again and make a whole new plane just that simple. There we go. All right, see what I mean? Sopping wet brush full of color. Don't want to just drop that right into the paint thinner. And if you have the means, get yourself another brush. You don't have to clean as much. There we go. Picking up just a little bit of this titanium white, and let's put in a little reflection here. Push in, pull down. Push in, pulling down. As I move away, it's going to get a little darker, which is just what we want. A little bit brighter under this moon. Pushing in, getting something started here. We're not too worried about it past that point. There we go. Because I didn't have much white in there, give my brush a quick little wipe and a good devil beating. Now with a clean dry brush, now we start pulling and softening. Don't really want to do all that with that first brush, or else you just keep putting more white on here, you know. We don't want it more white, we just want to soften what we have. So, clean brush for blending. Give it a good once over, twice over, whatever you have it. And then very, very light, blur it sideways. Gentle, gentle, gentle. 2 hairs and some air, as Bob would say. I'm not too worried about right at the edge. We'll cover that up. Get up as close as you can, and you're probably okay. There we go. Now, wow, we got so much stuff to do still. That's awesome. Let's put in a little land. A little rocky earth, so to speak. Pull out my brown, cut across, get that little roll of paint, and just lay it on, just slightly over the grass, and then slightly over the edge of the reflection. That's what just covers everything up. Look at that. As I get closer, I just let it get a little wider. Helps the impression that got about the same amount of dirt showing here, but since it's closer, it would look a little closer, look a little bigger. Over here, I like to pull towards the center this way. Just laying some of this on here. Maybe there's a little more. Like that. Figure it out. It's a little easier to highlight if there's a little more there, so whatever. Now we'll take our white, a little bit of that brown, loosely mix them together. Let's see what we get. Get that marbly look. Maybe even a touch of the black. Something like that. Look at that. Cut across, get a little roll of those colors, and we just lay this on. Letting it fall towards the water. Same on this side here. Not looking to cover up all the brown. Want to see some of it back there. There we go. Maybe a little bit brighter. There it is. That's the brightness I was looking for. Now we can come in here, a touch of the titanium white, maybe a speck of the liquid white. Give those a quick little mix. Now, sometimes I use the short edge of the knife here to find these little harder to reach spots where you don't want, you know, 1.5 inches touching at once. So, touching, sawing, moving. Keep those water lines basically horizontal and it's going to look amazing. You start curving or arcing them. Bob said it a number of times here, it just won't look right. And any kind of movement in your water, you can just throw a little in. I don't know if you needed that much or not. If you don't like it, well, you can always soften it out. There we go. Now, we are going to do a little bit of cleanup of that grass, because right now it looks like the dirt is on top of the grass, but we'll fix that in a minute or two. Got to make our cabin. Our cabin, we might even need a little more Van Dyke brown. That's okay. I've got tons of this stuff. Let's get a little out there just in case. And let's make our little cabin. You know, when I mean little cabin, we may just want to use the small knife for this. I've got one. So, let us figure out what we got here. This cabin is going to live out here, oh, let's just say right about there. And one thing that happens a lot with me is you have to do a little bit of revision now and again here, just getting the framing right, you know, just figuring out how big it needs to be, and then using the flat of the knife to spread out that thin little layer. Sometimes I'll touch and pull in, that helps clean up that back edge a little bit. You know, this is still just the dark parts of the cabin here. So we have a lot of leeway when it comes to building this thing out. I'm pulling down here, making sure to leave some of the eave. Not to rhyme, but leave the eave. And the rest of this just gets pulled down. Now, this is where I could show you here. If I just scrape through first, takes off that extra bit of highlight color. And it just makes it a little easier to lay in the brown. Just, there it is. I swear this cabin always wants to grow when you're making it, so we try not to go over it too many times. Now let's take a little bit of the white, a little bit of the brown. I already have some of this other color here, and this I'm going to add just a light touch of the bright red, just to redden it up a little. Something like that. Now, very small roll. See, I made that cabin so small that the long edge of the small knife isn't quite enough here. So, let's lay in the face here, leaving the eave unhighlighted, and making this just give an old indication of old boards, old wood. A little bit of brown into that same mix just to darken it, and let's just put a little on the back side here. This is going to be deeper in shadow, so I don't want it as bright. Now our roof line is going to be a little bit more to the red side here. Red, some black and brown. There we go. I like that color. And we'll get a nice little roll of paint on the knife. And just by touching and sort of pop, 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 no other way to say it, just it's gets more of a feel in here, just tapping and moving down. Create a little indication of shingles. If you want to hit it one more time, just a couple of little extra ones over here. There we go. A little bit of a dark brown. I like making these pull down doors. Just touch and whack. There it is. You wanted a bigger door? Pull sideways. Now, the little bit of that titanium white, liquid white mixture I have that I used for the waterline, very small roll. We're talking thread-like amount, you know, just give it one little tap. Bow. Bow. There it is. Sometimes it makes a couple of noises to do it. One maybe across the back. What do you think? Just bow. Maybe one right here. Bow. There it is. Don't need to go too crazy with your bounce. Just a little bit. Sometimes let's create a little reflection there, or highlight, I should say. I have this dirty old brush I haven't cleaned yet, and I'm just going to go right back into my grass here. Get a little ridge of paint right up on the edge. Let's clean up our cabin edge. This cabin's seen better days. A little run down, no path coming off of it or nothing. And what I like to do here is make sure in some spots let that grass come over the dirt. Right now it looks like the dirt's on top of the grass, so if you just extend the grass, let it overhang a little, whatever colors you're working with, just helps sell the effect. Now maybe, let's give this a try. This is, like many of the things I show you here, this is optional. I'm going to lighten this color up a little bit brighter, maybe even a little extra light. Get a little bit of there. And just where you think it's catching a little extra zing, give it a little extra highlight to the highlight. Who's to say how much you really need here? Just you. You get to decide. Off in the shadow side, you know, you wouldn't really have any of this. You know, I think it's a pretty rare thing, but once in a great while, Bob would come in here and tap a little bit of a darker color. Shadow out behind the barn, or behind the cabin. And that's it. I think we've got just about all we need, except for maybe the old dead tree trick. A little bit of liquid white, titanium white, a little bit of paint thinner. Find the color that works here. Just basically white, finding more of the consistency that we want. Let's take all these whites and see what color we get. White. And just old dead tree right there. Kind of threatening the cabin maybe a little bit. Sometimes you got to make a little more. Got a couple of dead limbs traveling up. And then, of course, we got to hide the foot with a little bit of that grass. There we go. Now, let's take a little bit of paint thinner, a little bit of the bright red, thin it way down, give it a quick little signature. And so now I've got an updated version of my Harvest Moon with cabin. There was the original, and there was today's. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to the next. We'll see you next time. Take care.